Last week, Peacemaker launched its first 3 episodes on HBO Max. I reviewed them and asked you if you wanted to see weekly reviews for the show. You said yes. So today I'm reviewing episode 4 of Peacemaker. After capturing Judo Master and destroying the butterfly creature, the team returns to headquarters, now with the addition of Vigilante, and they strategize their next move. Now, before I properly start with my review for this week's Peacemaker, I want to know your thoughts on it, so drop them down in the comments below, anything and everything, just start the conversation. And if you like movies and TV, this is the place to be, so consider clicking that subscribe button if you don't want to miss any future conversation on your favorite movies and TV. So, if you saw last week's review of the first 3 episodes, here it is if you want to check it out. Spoilers for that one. We're also going to talk spoilers for this one today. This show really surprised me for the get-go. And I have to say, number one, this is my favorite episode thus far. But at first, that first half of today's episode, where we're just strategizing the next move, really, and we're seeing the dynamics of these characters at play and the relationships at play, really. And we clearly saw James Gunn slowing things down. And so at first it wasn't really working for me. It just wasn't clicking really well. But by the time the episode ends and we have the whole context of what James Gunn wanted to do and did with this episode, this is fabulous television right here. And again, by far, this is my favorite episode thus far. Because in this episode, we still have a ton of that humor that we've become acquainted with when it comes to this show. The familiarity of the tone and of the James Gunn-ness and the energy of the show is there. From the fight with Judo Master that is just brutal and slow enough for it to be realistic. It's not a high-octane action sequences, it's just 2 dudes brawling, even though one punch from that Peacemaker would clearly knock out that Judo Master immediately. But what I love about this episode is that we just see vulnerability. And we have these characters throughout the episode at their most vulnerable. And overall, it just ends up being a very shitty day in Peacemaker's life. And I think we all relate to that. Where sometimes you just have a day where everything goes wrong. And in this one, everything goes wrong for basically everyone. Where Peacemaker needs to come to terms with the fact that his father is a racist and he's not a good man. A.R.G.U.S has to keep on keeping this secret from the rest of the team about who her mother is, why she's a part of this team, and the secrets that she's keeping from everyone else. Even that moment where A.R.G.U.S is trying to confess and have this very human moment with Harcourt, she just keeps on bashing her mom about how not human she is. And we see this character that we see is very broken and doesn't show off her emotions and keeps everyone at a distance and doesn't really let anyone in. And we see how she was broken due to this. And all these interactions throughout this episode I found fascinating and I found enlightening. And they kind of contextualize what we have been seeing from these characters and their interactions thus far. Even when Peacemaker goes and tries to talk to Harcourt at the bar to ask her what is in his file about his brother, and then we have that cool slow rock ballad moment again. The soundtrack continues to kill it in this show. And we see not only how broken Peacemaker truly is, but we get a little view of how socially inept he has become, where he can only really be himself and he can only feel at home with creatures, really, not humans. Even when he compliments Harcourt, he says something incredibly sexist. And yes, he doesn't mean anything by it, but it's still nevertheless sexist. So when he smokes one and then has that moment where he's remembering everything about his brother after the confrontation with his father, that he tried to help, he tried to solve the situation because it's not his fault, and his father just bashes him and continues to insult him and tells him he doesn't love him, he never loved him, And again, just one of those situations where you see one person trying to do the best they can, but everything just goes wrong. And it's one incredibly shitty day for this one person. We even start to get a little bit of his regret having killed Flag. And in this episode, if you saw last week's review, you know my one issue with Peacemaker thus far this show is that he doesn't really feel like the same Peacemaker. But in this episode, I saw a glimpse. I saw a little bit more of a transition from the Peacemaker in Suicide Squad to now the guy that we have been seeing. And again, it kind of recontextualizes that guy that we saw in the first 3 episodes, where now it feels like more of a transformation. It feels like growth. And these characters have all grown throughout this particular episode. And I found it fascinating, where again, it clearly has still the same identity, but it focuses on something else. It approaches these characters and the introspection of these characters from a totally different lens. And to me, that's what makes this show now very special. This episode just proves that what we saw was the surface, was all the fun and games to get us acquainted with who these characters are, what's the tone of this show, but now we get the human perspective. Now we start to peel the layers and dive underneath the surface of who these characters are. And in that, James Gunn continues to do a tremendous job. He loves telling these stories about these broken characters, be it with Guardians, with the Suicide Squad, now this. He just continues to prove how he can show these people that are cracked. And he looks into those cracks, and we explore why they're there. And that's very human. That's very compelling storytelling. And that's why this episode so far is my favorite. And Peacemaker is not the only one who has a shitty day, as Vigilante is trying to just strengthen that friendship and prove that he is a worthy member of this team, that he keeps complaining about his pinky and all. That's really funny. But then, at the pressure of Adebayo, who inadvertently makes this happen, he goes to prison for Peacemaker to try and kill his father. And again, just ends up fucking everything up. But then we have another human moment where Harcourt opens herself up and goes to take this guy out of prison and takes him home. It's just these simple moments, these moments of vulnerability and humanity that really highlight the strengths of this show. And on the grand scheme of things, we move the story forward with Judo Master trying to talk to Peacemaker before he gets shot. And at that point, I thought he had died. I was like, oh shit, did not expect Judo Master to die. He's in the intro. But obviously turns out it didn't die. And by the end of the episode, Myrn, again, recontextualization of everything we saw and heard in the past 3 episodes, where he never felt anything, he never shared his feelings. And in this episode, there's a little exchange about his parents, and he kind of avoids the question, and now we find out that he is a butterfly. So now, as they usually say, as the old adage goes, the plot thickens. And so, where we start the episode, the status quo is completely different by the time we ended it. So this episode feels much more intimate. It feels much more enlightening, and again, recontextualizes these characters, how we perceive them up until this point. And as big as this reveal of Myrn being a butterfly is, I don't even think he's going to be the big threat, because I think sooner rather than later we're going to see Myrn's identity revealed, the butterflies and what they actually are fully revealed to the team, because they're actually building Augie Smith, the White Dragon, I think, as the big threat. And that's going to show a lot of growth for Peacemaker himself. To finally confront his father, finally face off against his father, and hopefully finally defeat his father. But I think the show is doing a great job at giving us a red herring with the butterflies, where there's a lot of intrigue and mystery there, but their big bet that they're building up to actually take down, that is the real big threat, I think it's actually Augie Smith. And Robert Patrick is just doing a great job as this guy. He's just completely the despicable throughout these 4 episodes. So Peacemaker continues to really surprise me thus far. I'm not sure how long this season is going to be, either 10 or 8 episodes, I'm guessing 8. But if it's 8, we're right now halfway through, and all episodes have been bangers thus far, and this one really stands out from the pack for me. But those are my thoughts on this week's Peacemaker. What did you think about it? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Anything and everything, just start the conversation, because it's always the most important part. And thank you so much for watching. You are the best. Thank you to my channel members Bruna and Stuart for making this video possible, and I'll see you very soon in many more videos and next week on the next Peacemaker review. So until the next one, love each other and love the movies.